Hello, everyone, and welcome to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast Holiday Edition. And Mr. Jim Eichenhofer from Pelicans.com. I cannot think of the best way to ring in the holidays than Mr. John DeShazier. First off, sir, good to see you.
You know what? I forgot my Santa hat.
I was going to ask you.
I have a Santa hat, and I forgot it, and I just feel bad now when you say holiday edition because I could have dressed this up.
Well, that's where I was going to go. Can you see him? I think he's happy. Have you ever dressed up as the big man himself?
No, I mean, I've gained a little weight, but I'm not quite that big yet.
Yeah, it's very jolly.
I say yeah.
There's still time.
Unfortunately, I'm heading in that direction, but no, I've never had to do it yet. But you know, hey, you never know. I got a grandkid now, so you never know.
Just saying, you're always joyous, very jolly, always very happy. So I figured you'd go that route. Speaking of going that route and why we're all smiles, Jim, I want to say November 18th was the last time we had JD on the show.
Too long.
Slight difference in where the Pelicans are right now, heading into the final 2 weeks of December to where we were when we met you in November, man.
Looks like a totally different team. And we kept waiting for a turn for this team. We kept saying, okay, it's going to happen, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Now, you say it sometimes and you just don't necessarily know where it's going to come from. But at that moment, they had changed coaches. And we had to see what James Borrego's philosophy was going to be. We know Joe Dumars said time and time again when he changed coaches, what he kept saying was identity. Basically, this team didn't have one, and he was looking for this team to have one. I think this team has one now. And we've seen some things out of James Borrego where it wasn't just talk. They've been put into action. He said, look, these are certain directives that I want to see with this team. These are certain directives that we are going to accomplish, and we're seeing them now. And man, it's been fun to watch. It's been really entertaining basketball.
It feels like it kind of happened in stages as well. I mean, he immediately made some changes, and the wins didn't come immediately, but I thought the competitiveness right off the bat under him was different. That some of these numbers I'll probably get into a little bit later in terms of just not as many games where they were getting blown out. JD mentioned the identity. To me, he's leaned into a lot of things that have made the team more effective, one of them being the pace that they play with. Yeah. I think overall, you had to make a realization somewhere along the line that with the personnel that this team has, you're not going to go into games saying we're going to win 105 to 100.
Yeah.
That you're going to have to push the pace. You're going to have to score more points. They've made defensive improvements a little bit incrementally over the last few weeks, but it's still not an elite defensive team, and I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's realistic to think that this is going to be a top 5 defensive team. So you had to kind of change the way that you played, and I think that's one of the areas that he's really been effective in terms of just, I mean, games that they've scored 140 points, and they've had games where they're giving up a good amount of points, but they're still able to either win the game or be in it, which is something at the beginning of the season it seemed like was not happening. Where if you had a game, you know, I'm going to talk about Phoenix later. You have a game like that where you have a guy for the other side that makes 10 3-pointers and they just go crazy, and you're not even close to competing in that game. So there's just been a lot of different areas. I know I mentioned it's been in waves too. Guys coming back healthy obviously has been a help recently, but I think even before Herb Jones, Jordan Poole, Zion came back, they were showing a lot of signs that they were better than what they showed in the first few weeks of the season.
And I think the main thing is we kept saying, you know, if they play like this, they'll win some games. Now they're not winning immediately under James Borrego, but if they play like this, you can see some wins coming. And they were playing in such a way that, as Jim said, they kept it closer. And now they were being more competitive because, look, when a team loses by 30-plus points, 3 out of 4 games, that says something. And it doesn't say anything good. That says something about that team. So you got to change that team's mindset. You got to change its mentality. You got to change the way it plays. You got to change the way that team looks at itself, because you want that team to make other teams look at it a different way. Because if I see 3 out of 4 teams beat you by 30, I'm walking in the gym with my chest out like, all right, we got us one. Because that team, if you hit them hard and you hit them fast, they might lay down and you might get them by 25, 30. Well, now suddenly it's, all right, Houston comes in, hits them hard, says, all right, and it looks really, really bad for 2.5 quarters, and suddenly those guys found a switch. And look, 3 weeks ago, I feel comfortable saying they're not going to come back and win that game. Okay?
Yeah.
I feel comfortable saying it's probably going to be a 20, 25-point loss. Instead, they come back with an epic comeback, and it's like, okay, these guys are seeing some of those fruits come to fruition that they're talking about, and this can forge an identity of what you want to be.
You know, it's funny, you talked about the mentality of the team and just kind of the mindset that they had to change everything. It's funny, analyzing basketball, analyzing the NBA or the Pelicans, I try to stay away from some of the intangibles and some of these like gray areas because I'd rather focus on things that you can, objectively measure.
Yeah.
But it is amazing to think about when James Borrego took over, how many times he talked about the fact that he didn't use this word, but it was almost like you have to change the fact that the team almost feels demoralized, that you have to focus on the morale of the team. You have to get their confidence back up. And it's one of those things from the outside looking in where you say, these guys are all in the NBA. How could they not have confidence? How could they not believe in themselves? But you have all of those blowout losses, and it does wear on you.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing to think about the difference of he takes over in mid-November and he's talking about, we got to get these guys to believe in themselves, to what it is now where the vibes are about as high as you could imagine for a team that has the record overall that they have because they've been able to string together so many wins. And you're seeing, when we look at this team on paper, we say they should be able to win games. And now we're seeing those results happen.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not to kick dirt on Willie Green. He had a couple of playoff seasons. But James Borrego's been around. He sees this team. He's intimately involved with what's going on. And he says, you know what? We've got to change the mentality of this team. We got to make these guys feel like they can win. We got to make these guys feel like they're having fun because you get into a certain situation. I don't care if it's the NBA. I don't care if it's college. I don't care if it's AAU. When you're losing by a lot, you have a here we go again kind of thing. That's just natural.
Yep.
And you've got to instill in those guys, you got to stop it before it gets to that point. But even if you get to that point, you have to make guys feel like we're not the same team. Mm-hmm. We're not a here we go again team. We're going to fight. He keeps on talking about, not letting go of the sword. Don't drop the sword.
Yeah.
Basically, fight.
Yeah.
That's all that is. Just fight. Whatever happens, just fight and live with the result. If you fight hard enough and you give what you got, you can live with the result because a lot of times the result is going to be what you want.
It's nothing short than one of those property shows. Obviously, I'm sure in our line of work, JD, if sports isn't on TV, any chance to get the wife puts on something that she wants to watch. So the property renovation shows is a good way. That's the analogy that keeps popping in my head, right? The show starts and it's a piece of property. You're like, wow, there's no way. And at the end of the show, it's this gorgeous house. And I almost think going back to what Jim said, it's exactly how you had to look at it because it can feel daunting. You're so many games from 500. How are you ever going to? You have to take it one piece at a time. And I think to me, when I look at Coach Borrego, first and foremost, Jim said it, competitiveness. So let's take a look at it. How do we get competitive? And we lost some games where we were competitive. But now how we fix the defense, as Jim said, maybe you don't have the roster to become the best defensive team, but communication, switching, knowing what you're doing on defense, hustle, effort, energy, rebounding, those things can help that. And then offensively, hey, we have all these pieces. How do we work together? What they've done in the paint, and we're going to ask you a little bit later about something specifically in the offensive end. But those three, you attack it one piece at a time. Next thing you start seeing, there's a semblance of, wow, this could be a pretty good team.
Yeah, this is not going to be an elite shot blocking team. But you can rotate and challenge. You can do that. Now, the more pressure you apply challenging shots, the less likely it is for an opponent to make those shots, hopefully. But you can rotate and challenge. You might not be able to block everything, but you can rotate and challenge. You can hustle. You can go after loose balls. You want to pick up the 50-50 balls. You want to make sure you keep the opponent off the offensive glass. These are things that are fixable.
Controllables.
Yeah, those are controllables. Working hard is controllable. Guys, sometimes you'll play a team and sometimes, they're making circus shots. I mean, it's just like, hey, what are you going to do? But you can work hard. There's no way that you can not work hard. You can do that. You can control that. So when you control the controllables, often things will work out in your favor because you're just working hard. Because, I don't care what sports you're playing, more games are lost than won. You force turnovers, you can make a team lose a game. But if you can't force turnovers, if they got 10 turnovers in the NBA, they probably going to beat you. You can force a team to shoot it not as well as they generally shoot it because you're working hard. So there are a lot more games lost, I think, than won in any sport that you play. And I think the Pels are seeing some of that.
I want to go back to one of the things that you said too about the here we go again part of the season in the first few weeks. To me, I think we saw it two ways. We saw it in, we talked about the Houston game where you're down 20 something at halftime. Mm-hmm. And I think at the beginning of the season, there was a here we go again. We're down by 20. We're going to lose by 30, 35 points. And instead that totally flips. I also think too that the performance in the clutch games has changed a lot, where it felt like when there were close games at the beginning of the season, you were waiting for something to go wrong. Kawhi Leonard makes a shot at the buzzer. Some other crazy thing happens. They lost their first 3 overtime games, but then they win a recent overtime game at home. And, obviously they've won more games in general lately. But it just seems like some of the things that you talk about with the controllables too, when you start to get better results, you can come back every night and be like, you know what, we did this well and we got to win. It just kind of feeds on itself. It feels like there's been a little bit of a snowball effect in a positive way, whereas at the beginning of the season, unfortunately, it was a negative thing.
Yeah, you don't want a team to feel like, we don't deserve good things. Well, why not? You can have good things too. I mean, you can do it too. So you get in the clutch and you kick away a game or two, or you don't execute the way you want to down the stretch. It's not as clean as you want to see. But you need to continue to put yourselves in those positions and say, okay, we deserve to win this game. We worked hard enough to be in this position. Now, how do we execute? Because you get down the stretch of NBA games, teams ramp up the defense. They play more physical. The refs swallow the whistle a little bit more, unless you're OKC, and then in which case they don't. But you got to be able to mentally say, we deserve to win this game just as much as they do. So why can't we execute our stuff down the stretch as well as they do? Why don't we play as physical as they do down the stretch? Why don't we do what we do? Because you got to make teams adjust to what you do down the stretch, because everybody knows what everybody's doing.
All right, sticking with the property analogy here, right? So we saw the foundation being set, right? I guess that's what we're talking about, the foundation of who you're going to be, what your identity is. How about Coach Borrego's decisions on what the cabinets are going to look like and the house painting? What I mean by that is coaching not only on the court, but setting a tone for players. You want to play? These are the minutes that you want. You have to earn them. Him coming out publicly saying, hey, I got to find 5 guys that can defend, or things of that nature. John, when you look back at who he's using, when he's using, and how he's using, we're going to get to somebody specific here in a quick second. But just overall, we've seen games where he will look at a bench and it's this player this game, that player that game.
The move of the season so far, and maybe it'll turn out to be the move of the season overall. You play in Houston, you're down. Zion Williamson doesn't play a minute in the fourth quarter. He doesn't play a minute in overtime, and you win that game. Because James Borrego says, we've got some guys who are hot on the floor. We're going to ride the hot hand. These guys have earned the right to be on the floor right now, and we're going to see what happens. That takes a lot of whatever.
Cojones?
A lot of cojones. I was about to say fortitude, but yeah, I like that better. That takes a lot to have your best player on the bench and say, we're not going to use you in the clutch minutes because we have guys going so well that we think we can pull this thing off without you. Now, you maybe have to have a conversation after the game, maybe not. I don't know. But that says a lot in the moment to say, we're rolling well enough. And guess what? Sadiq Bey, you're playing so good. Stay out there. Herb Jones, you're playing so good. Stay out there. Derek Queen, he's got a unit out there that's vibing together. And he says, okay, we're gonna make this happen, win or lose, but we're gonna do it with this group. That earns a lot of trust with those guys on the floor. And I think hopefully it earns some respect from Zion Williamson to say, look, we can win games without me. We can win games even when I'm healthy and on the bench. I've got trust in my teammates. And now I have a little bit more trust in my coach because he didn't just bench me. He saw our team was playing well and he leaned into it and we won that game. I think that meant a lot for this team to see this team win a game like that.
You know, the most tangible thing that Borrego did immediately, if I recall, was his first game as head coach. He put Derek Queen in the starting lineup.
Yes.
And to me, it was one of those things where it's like, you have to live with rookies' ups and downs. You have to live with a little bit of inconsistency. But if you look at the broad picture and you see what this guy is bringing to the court every night more often than not, it just seemed like it was a move that I think a lot of people were kind of clamoring for and wanted to see. And it feels like sometimes you can look at rookies and say, you know, we're going to bring them along slowly. Right. We're going to eventually. But, I mean, sometimes it's better to just let them get on the court and learn. And I think they're going to benefit a ton from that next season and down the road. But already just having him on the floor for more minutes and having him in that starting position, I think made a big difference.
Yeah, and this was not like irrational thought process from fans. I mean, everybody was looking saying, you know what? He can play. I mean,
sometimes that's it.
And then you're saying, well, why isn't he on the court? I mean, 1 and 1 should add up to 2.
Right.
So you're like, okay, he can play. Why is he not on the court? And I guess James Borrego said he can play, and we're going to put him on the court because, as Jim said, you've got to live with young guys. I mean, if you got young guys who can play, there are certain mistakes that you're just going to have to live through because they have to gain the experience to not make those mistakes repeatedly. But you got to lean into what those guys are doing. Derek Queen being on the floor is just such a difference for this team.
Yeah.
You can run your offense through a 6'10" guy who can see over the defense. He can rebound it. He can push it. He can set your half-court offense. He can play one-on-one against the centers in the NBA. And he's got the perfect old man game. Somehow he gets guys, shaded the wrong way. He's able to get around people. He'll throw up a shot that's unorthodox, or you can say it's ugly, but it falls. I mean, so obviously these are things that this guy works on,
right?
And he continues to work on. And so you put him on the court, and it's like, okay, he's at the point where you can pencil him in. Okay, probably 15 points and probably 7-8 rebounds and at least 4 or 5 assists, and maybe he'll get you 9-10 assists, and depending on what's going on. But he also makes his teammates better because of the fact when he's on the court, you get movement. Because guys say, you know what? If I move, he'll give it to me.
Yeah.
If I make this back cut, he'll find me. He'll lob it to me. If I get open on the wing, he'll find me. He'll get it to me. You might get some turnovers mixed in there, but he's a guy who forces his teammates to move because you feel like if I'm moving, he'll find me and I'll get something good out of this.
I think the other thing too, Jim, that really stood out to me is since the decision to start those rookies, they haven't played every game, all the minutes, or even finished. Some nights it's not there. And other nights in Chicago, Fears finishes that game. Queen the last game, but 2 games before that, they went with Carlo or Misi or something. I think what James Borrego's been able to do is kind of coach that game in front, and it keeps everybody, in that locker room, hey, it could be my night, and engaged. And Jim, to that, I guess, direction, I'm going to ask you, here you are with Zion, and you're bringing him off the bench. You've had discussions. You've heard from both Coach and Z on that. What do you make of that and the decision to be able to say, hey, we're going to use you in a certain way?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I love the way that Zion has reacted to it. I was in the locker room after the game Saturday, and he spoke for a couple minutes about what his reaction has been to that and his understanding of, this is what's best for the team. So, I mean, I haven't talked to anyone yet who's been like, against the idea of him coming off the bench. I feel like everyone understands the positives of that move. He's been really good in that role. I mean, I think one of the things I think about too is if I'm one of these opposing teams and you're in the locker room before the game and the head coach is talking and he's talking to the backup bigs and he's like, you're going to go against Zion tonight. You're usually It's usually the backup guy, and they're like, what do you mean? What do you mean I have to go against Zion? Am I starting? No. He's coming off the bench. So I mean, I think it's been a big positive, and if you win, you can't argue.
Exactly. I mean, winning is the deodorant. Nobody can stink it up when you're winning.
Right.
So Zion, he might not totally love it, but to me, one, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. If you finish on the court, most guys are satisfied with that. But 2, when you have a winning formula, you ride that thing, and you ride that thing as long as you can. That's why I like to see when guys are on a heater on the court. I don't want to see a guy raise his hand and say, Coach, take me. No. You play until you can't run anymore, and then we will sub you out because you are on a heater and they can't stop you. And I think we're seeing some of that, especially when you get Zion off the bench. We saw it in the last game, man, where he just came out and brutalized Indiana, 29 points in 23 minutes. Just they couldn't handle him, and whether it was a starter or a guy off the bench. But when you bring him off the bench, he is more lethal because, as Jim said, you're playing against the backup bigs who did not have the expectation of dealing with Zion Williamson. The starters can't handle him, so you put the backup guys out there, and he's going to roast those guys.
Right. That's the key. That's the beauty of it. It wasn't a benching. It's, hey, how do we get you to close games? How do we get you healthy? Because, as you mentioned, he led the team in scoring that night. He was the dominant player on the court that night, so it still works, and I think that's what refreshing here as well. Something else that we've talked about in this podcast a lot is the 3-point disparity. It absolutely crushed the Pelicans early on this season. JD and Jim, they're winning games now, shooting single-digit made threes. You don't want that, but the points in the paint, setting franchise records and all. Can this be a winning formula?
You know, one of my favorite phrases is the math ain't mathin', right? Because I say that because, you know, you don't make enough threes. But over a 12-game stretch, they're scoring 66 points in the paint. 66. That math will math.
Yeah.
It'll add up because you're basically punishing teams in the paint, and you're doing it efficiently. And so I want to see this team make 12, 13 threes a game. That just isn't this team. This team is probably going to be around 9 or 10 a game. And that's okay if you're going to be scoring 60 in the paint. Now, there's going to be some nights where you're not going to get 60 in the paint, and it's going to show up in the 3-point disparity, as we've seen previously this season a lot, when opponents will make 17 and the Pels will make 11. That's a huge gap to make up. But if you're scoring like that in the paint, you can make it work. Can you consistently be that way in the paint? If Zion is healthy, and the way this team likes to get downhill and get in the paint, I think they can. I don't know if you can score 66 a game.
Right.
Man, that's a lot. That's a lot. But if you can get to 54, 55, you can still be extremely competitive and win games with that number.
Yeah, I think it's similar to what I mentioned in terms of the defense, that this isn't going to be a team that's top 5 that's going to lean on defense. It's not going to be a team that's leaning on 3-pointers either. I don't think it's going to be you're not going to go into games saying, you know, we have to make more threes than the other team or we're going to lose. But I do think, and maybe this is the optimist in me, I do think that the numbers are going to come up a little bit based on Trey Murphy hasn't had a great 3-point start to the season, and Jordan Poole just came back a few games ago, and he hasn't been shooting threes either. I mean, we look at what these guys have done in their career, and you think over time it's gonna average out to what they usually do. So, you know, maybe the Pelicans have lost the 3-point battle 16-8 in a lot of games lately. Maybe you can get it to 16-12, or maybe defense is a little better. It's 14-12, and you get it a little bit closer. Maybe you're not winning it on a nightly basis, but maybe it's getting closer to even, and then you take the advantage that they have on 2-pointers and in the paint, and that leads to wins.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you can shrink the gap, because if the gap is too big, you just can't overcome it generally. Yeah. But again, if you're going to, you know, they've had games, back-to-back games where they scored 80-plus points in the paint. 80 points in the paint. Back-to-back franchise records, which I've done this for a while. I've never seen that before.
Right.
I've never seen that.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I've heard of that before.
Yeah.
And it's like, how does this happen? But if you can do something like that, which is obviously an anomaly. But again, they're on a 12-game stretch where they're averaging 66 in the paint. So it's like, okay, maybe this is the team that can do that.
Yeah, well, it goes back to what Jim said. This team has talent. It's putting it all together. All right, final 5 minutes of the show. And this is my favorite part where Jim just wows us with the knowledge. I didn't know if you knew this, JD. I just read his tweets on the air for all the info. Let's give him the award out, sir. Player of the Week award. I don't know how you choose on this one.
I had to flip a coin between Sadiq Bey and Trey Murphy, and both sides of the coin came up. So
the coin just stood up. The coin just stood up.
So I'm like, I guess I have no choice but to pick both guys for Player of the Week. Sadiq Bey averaged 23.5 points. They only played 2 games because of the NBA Cup schedule. Sadiq Bey, 23.5 points, 7 rebounds, shot 53% from the field, 44 from 3, was 9 for 9 on free throws. And then Trey Murphy, 22 points, 4.5 rebounds. His splits were 67, 57, 100. So between the two guys, they made all 21 of their free throws, which is a big positive as well. Right. So those are the players of the week. In terms of the player to watch over the next 7 days, I'm going to go with the most obvious choice that you could possibly come up with, which is Zion Williamson. Obviously, we're going to keep tracking whether he's starting or coming off the bench. As we record this Monday morning, we don't know if even like tonight he could be back in the starting lineup. Herb Jones for the Dallas game was listed as questionable with a migraine after he got hit in the face. So, I mean, there could be a starting lineup change before this show even airs. But with Zion, he in his 3 games since he's been back from injury, he's averaged 18.7 points in only 23.8 minutes per game. His usage rate, which is too complicated for me to even get into, is a bit higher in the bench role than it was as a starter. And his shots per minute, which I think is a thing that is easier for people to understand, is also up. So to me, the thing I'm keeping an eye on if he continues to stay in this role is it just seems like you can go to him even more because now he's out there more with the second unit guys as opposed to some of the starters who take a lot of shots and need the ball.
Well, he's playing against lesser competition, so he should be taking those shots. And he hit a stretch, against Indiana where it was like, okay, just give it to him every time. They can't stop him. Give it to him every time. And this is against their backups, obviously. But then when Pascal Siakam comes back on the court, it's like, okay, he's rolling. Still give it to him every time. So you can certainly do that, I think. And that's why his shots per minute, I think, are up because he should have those shots against backup units. I want to rewind back to Herb. He didn't even get a foul on that. He didn't get a foul on that.
He did not.
He get whacked across the face, and now he's got
basketball move.
Nothing hoops about that. I mean, you at least got to. If you missed the foul, at least go back and review it. And
yeah.
Anyway, yeah, Zion's a great guy to watch. Obviously, the players of the week, of course, I agree with. Sadiq Bey is just. If we were on a different podcast, I would probably cuss. He's just a freaking pro.
Yeah,
he's just a pro. And that's something that every team in the NBA could use. Certainly the Pelicans can use. Love to watch him work.
Well, it'll be an interesting week of basketball here. We got a pair of back-to-backs, right? With Dallas and Cleveland, then 2 straight with Phoenix, and then the Knicks on that Monday, which should be fun, though, to see where this team is the next time we meet you. I love this episode. I had no idea we'd be talking about JD as a possible Santa in the future. Jim said cojones, and more importantly, we tell you happy holidays. Thank you for always tuning in and watching the New Orleans Pelicans podcast.